file.
All right, so we're going to also talk about our presidential candidates, including our incumbent and Vice President Joe Biden, who's running. And Drew has some cool compare and contrast information for us. So let's do that, Drew.
I'm working on it.
I'm going to just share the screen while you pull that up.
There it is. Okay.
And, oh, wait, that's your screen. Okay, cool.
Anyway, that's it. I've been working on this since yesterday. I had a headache all day yesterday, so I wasn't very focused, and it's still a little. Anyway, so this is just from their personal charts. This is their natal charts,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gone through and picked and chosen some different things, and so we just want to go through that and see how that is manifested, and it may show us some things we don't know about these guys. So I like to start with the North Node. So what's the purpose in the life here?
Right, our
And you
destiny,
see,
our life path. It's so interesting because when you have a north node that's really different from your sun, moon, and rising combo or something like that, often we can get this information that we didn't know about you. So with Trump, he is a Gemini, right? So having the north node in Gemini isn't as much of a surprise, his,
yeah,
goal or why he's here.
right,
But Biden's a Scorpio, so the north node in Leo is quite different than Scorpio. And so it's interesting to integrate their
right,
sense of who they are with their destiny and path and how much they're embodying their path on their journey.
yeah. So again, Trump, you have the Gemini, so he's a lot about communication and talking and
Tweeting.
sales and, and tweeting.
Yep.
Yeah, and with his North Node there, uh, you can let's look at this. This is just the straight text. That's the first line where it's italicized. That's stuff I've added. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a quest. This is anybody with North Node and Gemini. This is a quest to learn to see life from other people's point of view and to become adept in the art of communication. But here's my note. What I've observed, he sees others' points of view and uses it against them.
Well, Geminis are really smart and you
Yeah.
have all that information. And so I always tell my Gemini clients or North Node and Gemini clients, it's not necessarily about how you use the information. That's more like coming from an Aquarian point of view, or coming from a Capricorn or a Virgo point of view, or how I use the information, how I
Yeah.
disseminate it. So Gemini's best motion is like to have all the information, right? Not
Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily to disseminate it or manipulate it or to, and so um, I don't know. It's like, of course, like Trump, even if he had never become president, it's like having all of that in front of you is just part of who he is. And I think there's a lot of people that are, I don't know, not like addicted or whatever, but we all are on our phones and the internet and media and stuff. And to some extent, maybe that appeals to people, right? Because we've had
Mhm.
presidents that are like, I'm not on social media or and I'm not in the news or whatever. And they
Right.
kind of put this wall between them and that accessibility and that relatability. I think people, they relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I'm saying, there's the positive Gemini, which is communicative and open and honest and
And
dealing, and,
fun.
and then it's also rules mischief and thieves,
Right. Which could also be fun. No, I'm just kidding.
not which is fun to them. Come on, they're
Oh,
being true to themselves. They're
yeah.
being true to themselves.
It's shadow
So,
fun.
so it's a great sign for someone who is a con man, who most people see Trump as a con man. Now he
Well,
maybe
they
doesn't
love him or
see
they
that.
hate him, right? They love him or they hate him.
They love him or hate him. It's a duality. Uh, Here, back to the text, you have a tendency to be restless and scattered. I think we can see that. And he needs to develop focus and the ability to communicate your ideas in a way that helps the many people in your life. Now, I note that he can focus, he can't focus. Sometimes it totally does a 180, but he'll focus there. So he's grown up and been able to use that. Sometimes he just is helping the many rich and influential people in his life. So he's also a Gemini as a broker. Gemini's, here, this is here and this is here. We can put these together. That's a Gemini talent. I've noticed. You can broker things. Now, Biden's North Node is in Leo, which is a quest to develop inner strength. and he may find that he experiences times of loneliness. I can kind of see that with him. He's been through some lonely times. He lost his first wife and daughter in that car accident. He lost his son to cancer. And those are times to help forge his own creative life in order to give generously to the world. And you
Yeah.
think, people think of Leo as being imperious and the boss, but the good Leo is extreme generosity. It's like giving from the heart.
Yeah,
Does
well,
it
I
really
think of
see that?
Leo North Node too as like it's a quest to develop unconditional love. And so,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah.
happens to me, I am creating love and receiving love in a way that's transformational. I mean, that would be like the best metaphysical way to have that North Node in Leo express.
Yeah. So we have one guy who's a broker, a salesman, and another guy who wants to give unconditional love.
Well, and it's funny
If
because it's
ideally,
there's so many signs in these guys both these guys charts that people, I call it rude astrology or like, it's like the rude prejudice or whatever that people create astrology memes or whatever. But Leo and
yeah,
Gemini are both ones that people, you know, that's not the astrology signs that get the best names when people are poking fun at the chart. Um,
right, right, right. Ironically, though, the other Gemini president we've had, at least in my lifetime, was Kennedy,
oh, I didn't know that.
who also had a little, oh, shall we say, sexual wandering side. But again, we won't go there. That's a whole nother story. So here, let's stick with the North Node. Trump's is in the 10th house, which
Mhm.
means he needs to repay his past life karma with understanding and compassion, after which maturity will follow. And I'd say he hasn't gotten there.
You
Just
know what? The North Node in the 10th also is somebody who can feel and take on themselves to feel like a father. Like
right.
the way he acts, he feels like, from his point of view, he's fathering the country, right? And people that love Trump, feel like,
That's true.
he is that kind of a figure that they will, your dad comes home and tells you something that's maybe a little scary or a little crazy. It's like your dad's. You like just you trust him and you love him, and he kind
Yeah,
of creates and fosters that a bit with his following as well.
very much so. Notice it says this is a quest for dignity in the
Mm,
eyes of the world. Well, he mistakes people's loyalty for dignity,
mm.
and he thinks he has more dignity than he does. I think he has a distorted understanding, but there's no compassion there, which I don't know. That's just my opinion. But Biden is ninth house, so he has a quest to develop his higher mind. Now, part of his challenge is to let go of past life tendencies to be narrow minded and to learn to broaden his perspectives. And that is reflected in his current challenge that the Democrats are, just upset about. Uh, they want him to be more inclusive and not so much tied to his past, which in contrast looks pretty narrow minded sometimes. Now, he also has that moon in Taurus, which has him leaning towards conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
But his Sagittarius rising keeps his mind open to the big picture. I've seen, just watching him for the last year or so, he definitely knows how to learn, and he shows that he can learn. And that's a Sagittarius ascendant, very
Sagittarius
much.
and Taurus working together, it's a quincunx relationship. It's something people don't normally think of as, yay, this works together. But the balance of being able to create peace and being grounded with expanding and having the risk to try new things and not being afraid to jump in,
Yeah,
I think can be a really cool combo.
yeah, and we'll get to his Taurus in a minute. But also, ninth house has the quality of Sagittarius. Just
Yeah. It's
pointing that out for
expansive,
people.
it's higher learning, it's higher truth,
Mhm.
hopefully transformative. Those are like the positive qualities that we could hope for.
It's very inclusive too.
Hmm.
Now, let's just go to the moon. Trump has a moon in Sagittarius, which I say your emotions may be grandiose and want to roam all over the place. That's my observation. Now, he feels he has wisdom and great words to impart. That's his feeling. Whether he actually does or not is another part of the chart.
But it's like
But
the freedom to feel
yeah,
whatever in the moment and to be able to act on it. You know, like
yeah,
a fire moon doesn't want to just feel something and keep it inside
right.
and shouldn't have to. And so I think, yeah, it's like freedom. I need the freedom to be and express, and whoever I am, take it or leave it. Like I don't care if I hurt your feelings. This is who I
Yeah.
am.
Right, right. And that's very common with and again the moon and Sagittarius. The Sagittarius part, um, Sagittarius, I love them for it, but Sagittarians can be the people who they'll just speak their mind.
Yep.
They'll just open up their mouth and put their foot in it.
Well, and people
But
get so mad about
they
that, but
don't
it's
hold
like,
back.
but
I
it's
know.
like,
I
where
mean,
is it coming from? Because there's
yeah,
other signs that would do that too. But when I want people to think about when a Sagittarius does that, it's sort of like an evolved Sagittarius, somebody in their healing, whatever, like
yeah,
disclaimer. But it's sort of like I'm saying whatever comes to mind and how I feel that's my truth because
yeah,
I'm evolved
yes,
enough that I think you're evolved enough to handle it. That you're not just going to go, crying in the corner because I said it how it was. I'm not lying.
right,
I'm not trying to hurt your
right,
feelings, just being
yeah,
myself. And if you're an evolved person who's strong, you can handle that and say something right back to the Sagittarius and they'll probably laugh.
yes. Yes, and that's very much Sun in Sagittarius. This is Moon in Sagittarius, so pretty much he speaks what he feels,
Hmm.
and we see that. Now Biden's going to be more Moon in Taurus, which is more reserved and uh, and more reserved. That's a good way of saying it. Generally speaking, you're able to meet your own. And again, he's self-sufficient. He can meet his own emotional needs. He has that need emotionally for stability and steady routines. He likes to maintain those as much as possible. He may fear change, but I think at his age and what he's been through, he's maybe just more cautious about it. Uh,
Slow change and calculated so that I can ensure peace. So I think when you're thinking about somebody that's making a snap decision on something that could create a lot of emotion, Moon and Taurus makes me feel safer in the world for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, Preferring the safety of the known rather than the unknown, and I think this is helps him in his campaign. That I think people recognize that a lot of people are that way. They're cautious. They're conservative. Um, there's an and he has an underlying practicality, which again that down to earth feel you get from it. I see that, and gives him a way of dealing with things. So again, that's very much part of his persona, and that people like. So that down to earth Moon and Taurus, and now Trump's Moon is in the fourth house, which can mean his home, his residence is constantly undergoing change. His home doesn't feel secure in a sense. So that's part of his insecurity. As an adult, he has learned to adapt to the constant changes in his life, and or he may feel a constant sense of instability. So again, he's looking for stability. He has a strong desire to live by the water. This is right out of the book. And
This
where
is
is he living?
funny. You could also benefit
Mar-a-Lago.
from dealing in property.
Also benefit dealing in property. So
That's
just
funny.
right out of the book, there he is. Now Biden, with the fifth house, it gives him more of a joie de vivre. That's happiness that's infectious. He is kind of underneath. He's kind of fun loving. He enjoys the company of other people, particularly young people and children, and others people respond to that. So again, that's again when he gets on his own and he's relaxed, you can see that. Now Trump's moon is opposite his sun, which can be an imbalance between the ego and emotions, his assertion and his empathy, his masculine and feminine natures. Again, mirroring kind of his Gemini side, a more duality. There's a result of disagreements between your mother and father, perhaps. I could see that. And perhaps the parents were at war with each other, so he has that internal battle, which gives him some indecisiveness and lack of action, which can also be reflected to the Gemini. If he gets that resolved, and when he does, he has great drive to achieve his goals, which
Where
you
is
see
his
that.
Mars?
This is his moon opposite the sun.
Right, but where is his Mars?
And the next one, Mars.
No, I just mean like
Mar-
what sign is his Mars? I'm gonna look it up.
Mars is in, I'll get it for you.
Got him.
Move this out of the way.
Okay, Mars and Leo, a conjunct his
Oh,
ascendant.
right. This is the big thing, and this is one thing I wanted to focus on in contrasting these two men. Trump, Mars, Leo, ascendant. Trump, Biden, Venus, Scorpio, ascendant.
It's very
So
different.
it's
And I can see
very,
how a Mars and Leo, and it's trine his moon, how
yeah,
that would appeal to the American public. I know what to do. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to take care of you. You're my lion pride. I've got this, right? Like that, there's a sense of comfort and leadership in that.
right. And Mars on the ascendant is I'm going to win.
It's powerful. It's like
I'm
it's a
going to
force
win,
that you don't want
whatever
to
the cost.
you don't F with that.
I will win at any cost. And if you can't see that in Trump, you haven't been paying attention. But he can definitely has the ability to recognize opportunities and make the most of them, and can rise. So he has lots of self confidence. Okay. Now also his moon is opposition Uranus, and he thinks his emotions are crazy, and sometimes he acts them. Some connection with his mother. Maybe the emotions were changeable and therefore not to be trusted. So he will experience conflict as he seesaws between the intellect and the emotion.
He's like
And
a
I can
guy
see
breaking
that.
away from his family. Like he's so
Yeah,
family oriented with his own kids and they're so
yeah,
involved. But like you can see in his chart this dichotomy of like that didn't work for me. Like whatever my family thing was happening, well, who knows
yeah,
what it was for him. It wasn't work for he needs the freedom, he needs to break through, break free, break away, get more
yeah,
information to be able to be powerful in the world in his own way.
yeah. Do it himself.
Mhm.
Do it himself. Uh, Mars is, Moon's opposite the North Node, so this is a very one of his one of his traits. He tends to learn from experience rather than books. That's true. Uh, but he's something he's working on. He needs to let go of past hurts and grudges because he's very vengeful. You know how he goes after people who aren't loyal to him and fires them and makes trouble for them.
Loyalty
He
is a
really hold,
big thing for Leo rising Mars and Leo. It's a big thing.
yeah, and he holds on to grudges, which is that's just unenlightened. But anyway, whereas Mr. Biden, uh, he has a quincunx to Venus from his moon. So he tends, one of his failings, he tends to cater to everyone around him and needs to be true to himself and gently leave others to look after themselves. So he's been good as the second guy, he was the vice president and stuff, and he was there taking care of the president. But now he needs to be true to himself. So this is just a part of his process that he's going through. We can see that. Moon square Pluto, he is very intense and very emotional. Moon trine Chiron, he's a gifted healer. He can face the painful side of life and share his experiences, which he's done about his death of his first wife, and his son. He does feel true compassion for others' plights, which we don't find in Trump. And Moon trine the North Node, his destiny lies close to home. He's from Scranton. He moved to Delaware. He works in Washington. He did not move around all much. Now, getting to the sun sign, Sun and Gemini for Trump. One of the downsides, there's also many times when everything comes tumbling down around you and you're left to pick up the pieces which have been scattered throughout your life. And again, communication is a key element. Biden Scorpio demands intimacy and honesty in his life, and that's challenging to others, but he's respected for it.
He's also dealing
He's
with some pain. He's got a lot of squares like Chiron square the
Yeah,
sun and North Node square the sun and Uranus square the North Node and Uranus square Chiron. There's some pain there that he is working through. And I think that either creates action that's based out of pain or it creates action that's based out of healing. And I don't know if we know him well enough to know, which way he's operating, but that's definitely there's something in there that is guiding how he's able to work through in a way that would be a leadership role.
and yet he uses that. Like you said, Sun square Chiron. Um, as he was growing up, he lacked confidence and felt lonely and had pain. but that wound is a source of his great understanding and gives him the strength to help himself and others. So he would make a good counselor. So I think that'd be a good image to have as a president.
He's a 12th houser. You know, he's a 12th house stellium. So if anybody is
Yes.
watching this, knows about the 12th house, it's not something explainable in intellectual or mental or human terms. It's a very deep spiritual journey. And to the extent we harness it, we're able to really help others heal. And to the extent that we don't, it's kind of a downward spiral. So I think for Joe Biden, it's pretty obvious if he's like, he can't really hide, like he can hide a little bit because he's a Scorpio and he's private, but he
Yeah.
can't really like be on this destructive path without us seeing that evidenced in his personal life, in his health, in the way he's able to express himself and take action. He doesn't get to hide from that being part of his chart in kind of a big way. And so I think that I don't know, it's not like a insurance policy, but it's definitely something the American public can kind of check in on what's happening for him in relationships and in his action and in who he is. That we can look to that and see that because he's a 12th house sun. He doesn't get to not be on a spiritual journey.
True. Just briefly here, touch on some other points here. Again, Biden's Scorpio. He's insightful and not frightened of tackling a minefield of emotion. He's not afraid of tackling much, really.
Well, we talked about Scorpio, the alternate chart for the USA having Scorpio rising, or we talked about
Uh-huh.
Scorpio placements in presidents being
Yeah,
helpful just because they're not scared of anything. They're like, oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
like a pandemic. I'm not scared of that, whatever. They can handle it with a very, like a proclivity.
We'll deal with it. In other words,
Yep.
which we'll deal with. And
Hmm.
then, and the chart for Congress is a Scorpio sun, but that's another story.
That makes sense.
Um, Now, going back to Trump, this is so right out of the book. He's someone who likes to make his mark on the world, especially through his profession. He's likely to be born to parents of good standing in the community. From his favorable start in life, he's likely to steadily improve on his status.
Right?
Success comes easily in whatever he does. People in high places look kindly on him and help him out. And he's also likely to rise to a prominent position in society, perhaps even in government office. Bada boom. Right out of the book. Um, and there's that part about uh, Biden's sun in 12th. Much of his life is spent working behind the scenes. Uh, at least he would work behind the scenes. Sorry. Instead of just golf. Um, he's the stage manager rather than the published author,
Well, it's like
or rather than,
the danger in that is if there are people around Biden that are manipulative, controlling, power hungry, whatever, if
yeah,
his people around him are not the kind of people we want running the country, that's a huge factor. Whereas with Donald Trump,
sure,
he's the one running the country. Like all the people
yeah,
talking to him, like he's the one. And so
yeah,
I think with Biden, like even though we have the spiritual side of his chart, it's like, but who's around him? Because the dark side of that is sort of somebody else actually running the country while he's president, kind of thing.
right. So his choices of people around him are very important.
Absolutely.
12th house is the house of self-sacrifice for the good of others. Let's see. Let's see. Trump, Mars, Sun, sextile Mars, very assertive. Trine Jupiter. He enjoys life. Actually, they both have this. Both of this. Uh, both have trine Jupiter, Sun trine Jupiter. You enjoy life and popularity. It would be unusual for you to go without comforts. You have a tendency to be lazy and self-indulgent. So, which of those characteristics are emphasized by the two different men? I'll leave that up to you. Trump is a rebel, but also a leader. Others see you as arrogant, willful, and disruptive at times. Politics appeals to you. Again, right out of the book. Biden, he's an effective communicator with Mercury conjunct Venus, gentle, loving, and charming, affectionate, enjoys people. Uh, Biden, again, Sun trine Jupiter, generous and happy. Again, do you have a tendency to be lazy and self indulgent? He probably has a side of that, you know?
It's funny
Uh,
because I love these where they spit out like a definition. Like if you have a Sun conjunct Venus, you enjoy the company of other people. But if you have a Sun conjunct Venus in the 12th house, you only enjoy the company of other people who really get you without having to do a lot of work to explain the depth of how you feel or what you're thinking, but somebody that can just set a space for you, right? And those other people, I don't want to be around those people.
Yeah. And so again, Biden has Sun opposite Uranus, which he probably had places where he's impulsive and unpredictable, but I think he's definitely his other things in his chart have balanced that out. And square Chiron, growing up, I can see he lacked confidence and felt lonely. His wound is a source of his understanding, and we've gone over that. And Trump's ascendant in Leo, we've already discussed that.
Yep.
There's times when your passion and haste lead to downfalls. So he can be his own worst enemy.
I wonder what the other rising signs are of the other, sort of candidates or runners before the primary hits. It's interesting. They both have a fire rising.
Yeah.
People seem to think that that means something will get done, right? It feels
Yeah.
like an action will be taken or at least
Yep.
initiated. And so I find that interesting. And then a lot of the stuff I've read about political and presidential astrology says it's really important to look at the ascendant and the midheaven first, where in a normal chart you would look at the sun and the moon first, right? Or the sun, moon, and ascendant
Yeah.
combined. But there's a lot of presidential markers with the ascendant and the midheaven and how those interact. So it'd be cool to maybe talk about that one next time.
Sure. And here, just to compare and contrast, Trump, Leo ascendant, he gives the orders. He's the king. Biden, Sagittarius ascendant, he brings people in. People want to join with him. He has enthusiasm.
Yep.
People freely jump in.
Yep.
And then, okay, and then I had Mercury, Trump's Mercury in the 11th house, join a group with common beliefs. Well, again, in
The
Cancer,
mafia.
that's like the mafia, which mafia in Italian means family.
Me
And
familia.
people have compared him to a mafia boss, and he has underworld dealings. Square Neptune, Mercury square Neptune. To me, I see this. Say this is a problem. This person has a problem with the truth, speaking the truth, because the Neptune is not reliable for facts, and also difficulty with powers of discrimination. Sometimes his own thoughts and opinions are vague and confused and difficult to pin down, prone to deception, lying, and promoting illusions. And then squaring Eris, his communications, when he speaks, he disrupts things.
Hmm.
Boom, he throws things out of whack. Biden, Mercury, and Scorpio, which is more deep thinking, tendency to develop, go into the core and not superficial. 12th house, he has a strong imagination, can be a spokesperson for people, the masses. Biden conjunct Venus, Mercury, expresses himself lovingly, enjoys talking with people.
It's so
From Jupiter,
interesting. It's so interesting to look at these because I know and I see that you're looking at his placements in regards to his behavior or things that he's done. And I'm also trying to look at it from a lens of people who really love him and support him and what does that feel like to them. And it's
yeah,
almost interesting because when you talk about some figure in the news that you don't know anything about or some person you don't know anything about, even an ordinary person, it's hard to get a feeling for them. But as an astrologer, when I look at his chart, I can almost like feel how he feels. Like there's this thing that it's like he's trying to protect, and he's trying to protect, how he feels like he can best support a group, and however, whatever that may mean to other people, but that ability to get into conflict with people or to communicate in this way that people they take offense to it. It's like in his feeling, it's like, but I'm trying to protect you and I'm trying to, like not a nurturing like a mama with her baby, but there's
yeah,
definitely a responsibility that he feels and the way that he feels that he is, I don't know, taking care of the flock, so to speak, right? The sheep. He's taking care of the sheep. It's very
he has,
interesting.
he has that Sagittarian influence that he wants to be the teacher, he wants to be the mentor, he wants people to rise up.
He definitely needs, following and loyalty and respect. And, Cancers and Leos both, like, if you're going against me or you don't respect me or you've left the fold, it's a very painful sort of
Yeah,
break.
yeah, it is very, very painful. This reminds me of a recent Facebook or no news post I saw. There are many Republicans, um, in office or were in office who of late have joined on to the bashing Biden thing. And yet they talked to some of them, and in the process of doing that, some of them confessed it really broke their heart to do it because they know him and they know he's a good guy.
Mm.
And it really has hurt them. But just briefly, this will touch on Venus in Cancer for, let's see, Trump, and strong emotional binds with his own tribe, emotional need for financial security, and I put tendency to be a mob boss. One of his
And wanting to
parents,
have a wife that gives him children, right? That was
yeah,
really important to him his whole life, having children.
oh yeah, okay. And Venus is conjunct Saturn, so one of his parents, his father, what I've heard, may have been too strict, and consequently he fears expressing himself. But once he overcomes that feeling of inadequacy, once ever, he's very much Biden, Venus, and Scorpio. He wants a soulmate in life, and that's very important to him. Trine Jupiter, he has a talent for putting other people at ease.
Well, in
Naturally,
Venus Scorpio, like relationships are not superficial to him. His
no,
real, you know, and it's hard to know when you see a public figure or someone famous or a politician, which relationships do they have that are real relationships and which are like, we're shaking hands for the press. And
right,
because
right.
that's what politicians do. And Scorpios can function in that environment. But it's interesting if we really were to discover his true alliances and partnerships over time with empirical data, those would be intense and real, and that would show a lot about him and what he's here to do as well.
Now, another thing that makes him good in politics is Scorpio is politics, very
Mm-hmm.
much so. It's all
Yep.
about secrets and power.
Well,
But
you're the detective too. You figure out how things work and why,
work,
and you're able to operate in that venue, um,
right.
without having to give yourself away or to sacrifice yourself or to cry and run away from something that's very ugly. They can very much lock into that system and be able to utilize it in a way that's beneficial to themselves and to others.
Yeah, he knows how it works, and
Mm-hmm.
he can work it.
Yep.
People say, "Oh, I want an outsider." Well, you get Trump in there. He didn't know how legislation worked or Congress worked. He just
He
knew
did
how
it
to
his way.
push. He did it his way. Biden knows how to work, and that's some. Of course, some of my free-thinking liberal friends say, "Oh, well, he's in with the bad guys." I said, "Well, he gets his hands dirty. Let's say that."
Is
Now,
Hillary a Scorpio?
yes,
It's interesting. He's running against another Scorpio potentially.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. And then, of course, Trump, Mars, and Leo. We talked about that in the 12th house, conjunct the ascendant. Biden's Mars is in Scorpio again. I like this phrase that they used. He's a passionate warrior. He really gets into it. There's
He's
no,
going to do whatever it takes,
yes, that's a good
whatever
point.
that means. And that's not scary to him.
Yeah.
No matter how cute his little smile is, there's a dark side that he can do what is needed, no matter what is needed there. And I think some people really want that in a president. Some people want them to be able to, I don't know, quote, pull a trigger or go to war or do things like that. And other people want peace. And so I think that there's a little bit of conflict with him with his Scorpio and his Taurus, right? His
Mm-hmm.
Taurus. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much he puts away his moon because it is in the bottom half of his chart and it is in his house of creativity and it is in his house of expression, and he may gain his peace from his family and his children and his personal life rather than gain it from his political life,
Yeah.
in which case the Scorpio means business.
Well, one contrast of that Scorpio with Trump's Gemini and Leo is Scorpio is committed.
Yep.
There's no question about it. No question about it. He will stay committed to something.
To the death. And
Right.
Leo is loyal, but it's loyal first to the self and the self expression because that's why they're here, to be able to finally let out what has been trapped inside for several incarnations.
True. True. And these are just some other little odd tidbits I picked up. Trump has Jupiter in the second house, which reads, your self-esteem expands through increasing your money and possessions. So he's very much tied to that. Not so much the other guy. Trump has an enormous ability and energy to achieve his goals. We've seen that. He avoids restrictions of all sorts.
Yep.
He just wants to be free.
Well, it's kind of like the American thing too, right? You know?
Yes. Well, that's again, that's one thing that appeals has made him popular. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Saturn in Cancer may be emotionally inhibited, isolated within his own family. I can see a little bit of that. His Chiron, his wound in Libra, he may have suffered in an early relationship with a parent figure. This says of the opposite sex, I don't know, but definitely has some woundedness coming from his family, and also suffers pain through financial loss. He fears financial insecurity. His early emotional wounds have led to poor self-esteem, which he tries to compensate for with that Mars and Leo.
Well, wounding, like when you have wounding next to Jupiter, it can either mean the way that you acquire self esteem or possessions or money can be through the wounding of yourself and others or through the healing of yourself and others. And so that's
Yeah,
always a choice that we get to make. And when he has aspects and transits to his Chiron, that's more intensely pronounced. That choice has to sort of be made one way or the other.
sure. Yeah. That's definitely one of his big wounds.
Hmm.
And I love this one, Neptune in the second house. You may be unrealistic in your assessment of your self-worth.
Well,
There
and
may
it's
also,
opposite Eris
oh yeah,
in the
yeah,
eighth.
yeah,
So that can be an illusion, like it can change the way that we see power and the way that we use power and how we look at violence and spirituality. It can sort of make, because I think if people learning astrology can view opposite sides not as like stark opposites, but as part of a
right,
continuum,
yeah,
as being
yeah,
able to link the two. And I think you do that a lot in your Jungian research too. It's not just isolated, there's this flow between the two. But that can create that retrograde Neptune opposite Eris can create a reflection that isn't sort of matching what the outside energy is actually like. And it's a challenge to integrate it and something that should be metaphysically integrated for peace.
yeah. Let's see. Here's a tidbit. Pluto in the 12th house. You may find yourself constantly at the center of crises without understanding why. But he doesn't care why. He makes use of crises. Uh, that's part of his thing. Eris in the 8th house. Again, money, sex, and religion can get you in trouble. And he's a born survivor. So much we can see. And has a sixth sense when it comes to trouble, which helps him get out of these problems, these crises.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, Biden, some of his things, he has Ceres and Pisces. When he feels most cared for when he's feeling like at one with the world. He cares for others by relieving their pain. He's very very empathetic. Um, Jupiter in Cancer, he likes to look after his loved ones, and
There's like empathetic placements and sensitive placements and
yeah,
placements where people would say well placed, and then you get to Saturn and Gemini, and you're like, oh, we maybe need somebody to partner with him that can help structure because that doesn't seem like. And to a large extent, that's not really the president's job to structure everything.
no,
It's
no,
to make the decision and to be connected with the people and to. So maybe that's his cabinet. We hopefully have like a strong cabinet.
right. Definitely a cabinet who will speak up and communicate.
Yep.
And he prefers straight talk, which is everybody says about him. He learns through his relationships. He's had pain through them, and he really gets into them. His Saturn is conjunct Uranus. This is one thing I saw early on. He is independent and self-motivated. He can balance the structure of Saturn with the freedom of Uranus. He can come from both. So he really wants to put his profession, his own structure um, to support um, egalitarianism.
Yeah, there's a
Equality,
dynamic of
yeah,
freedom and breaking through in his chart with the Uranus and Gemini opposite his ascendant in Sagittarius. Like, how do we explore and get
yeah,
to a higher truth of freedom? And I think he feels
right,
kind of compelled to do that on a daily basis,
yeah.
and is always kind of internalizing about what that is and what that means.
And that's a hard job.
Yeah.
That's a hard task to take on.
Yeah, it is.
And you can see that he struggles. You can see that. But Saturn sextile Pluto, which gives him power to make changes. Chiron on the North Node, his destiny is linked with easing other people's suffering. Again, and connect also with some of that, a lot of that 12th house stuff. Possibly after facing a painful situation in his own life. Well, all his loss, yeah. He and Trump both are Uranus and Gemini, which focuses them on new forms of communication in the world's networks.
It's
So that
interesting though.
even though they're old guys,
Trump's is near his sun, and Biden's is opposite his sun. So it's a
yeah,
little bit different. Not opposite, but
yeah,
closely opposing.
yeah, separate. Um, and let's see, what else have I got? Uranus trine Neptune. He will change the way society looks at problems in its structures. Okay, we'll see about that. Leaders of this generation, leaders will appear who appeal to the masses. Well, that's definitely Trump. He has that too. Square North Node. He's been challenged to make a contribution to humanity. That's something he's really working on in his life, and he yearns to be of service through his profession. And he has a powerful drive to discover higher meanings in life. So that's kind of what makes him up. So that's kind of a sketch of both of those guys.
It's so interesting.
Uh,
I could see Joe Biden having been some completely different person who's not in politics at all.
yeah.
So it's interesting. I wonder about his story, what got him on that road into politics, and whether it was influenced by, his drive and his desire, or a painful event, or like what exactly put him in that sort of role, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe a more spiritual type of a calling, or maybe a healer, that kind of a calling. So it's interesting. I think to the extent that we know that, we know what he wants to do in office. You know what I mean? Where his motivations and intents lie.
So,
Um,
kind of in short, on one hand, we have Trump, who's the broker, loves doing that, whatever it costs. On the other side, we have Biden, who's more the counselor
right.
and takes counsel. So I'd say that's a pretty good summation. But
So,
this is fun stuff. I mean, it's just like, because you look at what's on the media and it's filtered.
yeah.
And the beauty of this, we say, well, what's behind all that?
Right.
What are they really after?
Well, and if we take it a step further, it's really good practice for me personally, for astrologers in general, to take someone who we have these conceptions, preconceptions, misconceptions, accurate perceptions, whatever, about a
Yeah.
public figure or a person, right? A person in our life. And to be able to look at their chart in a way that is open is really hard, right? It's really hard to not just say, aha, there it is. I knew you were a scoundrel. It's right there in your chart. Or, aha, I knew you were beautiful because I'm in love with you. There it is right in your chart. And to be able to take an objective view and to try to look at the continuum and the
Yeah.
evolution and the processes, and
Yeah.
what could Trump be if he wasn't president, or if he didn't have this, and what would Biden be. I think those are how we get farther into connecting, not just with the charts we're working with, but with people
Yeah.
in our lives and people that we can help. So it's really fun to look at this with you, Drew. Tons of information. So thanks for bringing your info and your fancy programs onto the show.
There's so much more, but I tried to edit it all down because
Yeah.
I had like many pages on both those guys.
Well, and there's so much more to talk about too. I know we have there's primaries coming up and all those kind of things. And there's also, these guys both have some pretty intense transits coming through this year. And we could look at their transits as opposed to the USA. And then we could smash up four charts together: the USA, the current transits, Trump and Biden, and see what that kind of looks like
Yep.
on key
Yep.
dates and times, to see how they might be feeling or how they might be affected by that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of Trump's key transits this year is one of those that says, you may just decide to quit that position of power and go do what you really want to do.
Right, right. I remember that one.
And it's like, that would be great, but he's Mars ascendant Leo. He's going to win. He's
But
got to win.
and isn't that transit after the election too? It's sort of like I won and then peace out. It's kind of like that kind of a transit could be a possibility.
Oh, that's Trump's transit now.
Oh, it's now.
Is
Okay.
Yeah, that's
He,
been going
I
on.
don't see him piecing out before the election.
No, even though the stuff is all piling up, we just looked at things in his chart that says, "Oh, he's going to stick through it. He's got the
He's a winner.
support of yeah, the winner. Yeah, yeah. Biden's
Cool.
coming in like a submarine, though.
Yeah. We'll see. We will see how everything turns out.
We'll see, it's a crazy year. Well, it's a crazy year for the world because Pluto and Eris are in that square. A
Yep,
whole world is
absolutely.
just going through this transition stuff. Well, peace out to you.
Peace out to you. So awesome to meet with you. We'll see you again soon, Drew.